I have saved India's nuclear forces from falling for having India's nuclear warheads tested in Russian or French high-energy labs. I wrote that the physics of what happens in a nuclear explosion cannot adequately be replicated in a high-energy lab. Laboratory models of missiles and jet aircraft may not have this deficiency, but laboratory models of nuclear weapons do, because of which there is no substitute for explosive tests, full yield explosive tests of nuclear warheads. I have saved India's nuclear forces from sabotage of the nuclear warheads by microwave signals from US satellites. I have saved India's nuclear forces from falling for the explosive tests of new designs without first destroying New Delhi, Washington, and New York with existing warheads, even if their actual yield is a fraction of the design yields, because any new explosive tests at this point will eliminate surprise and prompt the United States to take steps to forestall the simultaneous destruction of New Delhi, Washington, and New York, on which India's victory depends. As I have said in my other videos in more detail, CIA and RAW are full of tricks, and India's nuclear forces will keep falling for them unless they trigger the warheads without further delay. The warheads in New Delhi, Washington, and New York. Two paragraphs from my press release dated November 26, 2010, and a paragraph from my press release dated November 29, 2010, were as follows. First, from my press release dated November 26, 2010. When I say that there is no substitute for full yield explosive tests of nuclear weapons, I say this from a purely engineering point of view, and not for demonstrating to the world that our weapons work. As I said in a letter to the press after the 1998 tests, when Archidharam claimed that his computer models enable him to build higher yield weapons which need not undergo explosive tests, I said in the letter, one could not legitimately rely on an automobile engine developed on that basis if your life depended on its working the very first time it is ever used, much less a nuclear weapon. This applies to both computer models and laboratory models. What happens in a high-energy lab is a highly imperfect laboratory model of a nuclear weapon, which does not take account of a multitude of things. If computer models and laboratory models were sufficient, there will be no need for flight tests of missiles and jet aircraft, etc. The physics of what happens in a nuclear explosion cannot adequately be replicated in a high-energy lab. Laboratory models of missiles and jet aircraft may not have this deficiency, but laboratory models of nuclear weapons do. And in my press release dated November 29, 2010, I said, it is now being put out that a, quote, fix, unquote, has been applied to the 1998 failed thermonuclear weapon design, and there is no need for an explosive test of the fixed design, because the designers have, quote, confidence, unquote, that it will work. But it is a very foolish designer who does not test his fix with an explosive test. Didn't R. Chidambaram have confidence in his 1998 design, which failed? There has been no fix until the weapon is shown to work in an explosive test, shown as much to the designer as to the world. A designer who says it is not necessary is too stupid to design even a toaster, much less a nuclear weapon. The fact that R. Chidambaram could get away with his outrageous claim in 1998 that his computer models enable him to build higher yield weapons which need not undergo explosive tests, and similar claims about the quote fix unquote applied to the failed thermonuclear weapon design, unchallenged by India's huge science and technology community, except from me, shows that India's science and technology community is bereft of any intelligence. The fact of the homosexual M.K. Gandhi being a lifelong British agent, to which I have referred elsewhere in my press releases, as was Nehru, who admitted this to US Ambassador J.K. Galbraith, that he was a lifelong British agent. And the fact that M.K. Gandhi, who wrote to the white man, quote, "How completely you have taken possession of my body. It is slavery with a vengeance." This is what the homosexual M. Gandhi wrote to his white lover. And this letter of M.K. Gandhi is in his archives, and it was included in his biography titled Great Soul by a Jew from the New York Times, Joseph Lillywell, whose motivation was simply to demolish an Indian icon respected around the world, while the Jews at the New York Times had been covering up their ferocious crimes against India's real great soul. And the fact that this M.K. Gandhi waged a fake, quote, independence, unquote, struggle managed by the Intelligence Bureau, and yet remains a revered figure for 1.25 billion Indians, along with the fact that a handful of the British from halfway around the world ruled India for centuries, and now the CIA rules India through RAW, shows that India is a population of insects. And whether a few tens of thousands or a few million are killed in the nuclear destruction of New Delhi, it will be the death of insects. India's nuclear forces have the benefit of guidance from me, and that makes all the difference and will enable India to win over its enemy, the United States. There is nothing peculiarly Indian about this situation. As I wrote on June 15, 2010, in a press release that is included in my main blog, Nuclear Supremacy for India over US. Quote, "The life of a nation includes and can be defined by the life of a leader whose psyche and genes they come to share. By cutting off the life of the Indian, who is the life and light of India, from the Indian people, putting in place long-time agents of British intelligence and the CIA, such as the Nehru family and Vajpayee instead, CIA RAW have ensured the decay and death of the Indian nation. The nuclear destruction of New Delhi can change the situation and bring India back to life. I've described in the other videos how the simultaneous nuclear destruction of New Delhi, Washington, and New York will occur.